This is the story of Bambatha. Bambatha was born as a deer originally named Bambi. Growing up in the woods, Bambi lived in peace with his parents and neighboring creatures until one day a strange visitor came into the woods, the man. Bambi witnessed his father get shot and killed in front of him by the man. Bambi never knew death until then, and as he grew began to seek the answers from the hole left in his heart by his dad. Raised by his mother only taught him half of the story, so one day he left to find the rest. Upon leaving the forest, to his surprise, he encounters other animals, but in strange states he could not process. Working day in and day out, not for the well-being of themselves and each other, but for the man. Bambi witnessed slavery for the first time, and saw the same face as his lifeless father within their eyes. It was at that point Bambi saw an enemy in man, not as a predator to prey, but as a horrible beast whose appetite was never fulfilled. It was then that Bambi changed his name to Bambatha and returned to the woods to share the outside world's fate. Little did he know that the other animals wouldn't care, for they were safe in their world amongst the trees. Bambatha knew better, for when he lost his father, he lost that sense of safety. Anyone could be next. But he continued to spread awareness, slowly affecting the consciousness of the forest until he realized he must touch the ears of the persecuted and the persecutors. Bambatha returned to the outside world. Day after day, field after field, he would venture, speaking to the worker animals of freedom, a word that held little meaning to them. You see, most of the animals there were born on the farms, and their parents were already killed for meat or put down from old age. For them, this was what normal meant. But Bambatha urged them that normal did not mean natural and continued to speak dreams of liberty. This eventually grew his popularity and finally touched the ears of the man. They wanted to stop him, of course, but killing him would only make him a martyr in the animals' minds. No, they had to change him. So they approached Bambatha and offered him a deal. They would remain out of the forest he came from and give him sovereignty as long as he changed his message to fit their agenda. For what did the other animals matter to him? Spread the word. Farm animals were different and were meant to work. And in exchange, they would even let him live amongst man. Free food, free shelter, complete protection. But no, Bambatha knew better. He watched the house animals and was reminded of the animals in the forest who only cared about themselves and didn't realize that injustice anywhere would spell it everywhere. It was just a comfy cage. The house animal, the pet, was also a slave. So Bambatha inclined with a counter proposition to free all animals and see them as equally deserving of life. The men were infuriated. His message grew stronger with his conviction, and the animals became harder to control. He forced their hands. He had to be stopped. Deforestation and domestication continued over time, yet Bambatha's message also grew. There were even those of men who were touched by his story and teachings and allied with the animals as one movement. But one day, while traveling within the towns, Bambatha was pulled over by animal control. They asked for his identifications, basically documents proving his citizenship. This puzzled Bambatha, for this land was his birthplace. Never once as a child in the forest did he prove who he was or his right to be there. The animal control then captured and detained Bambatha for breaking the man-made law. The people and animals of the movement were furious with protests and riot. Yet the gun of man, that same weapon that killed Bambatha's father years ago, proved fierce. Bambatha urged his companions to cease their riots out of concern for their lives. He told them that so long as fear was not their master, they already won, and did not need to prove their courage with bloodshed. He urged them to continue his work by spreading the message of equality and the birthright of freedom. After a few weeks, by law, since Bambatha had no proof of identification, a collar showing him as a legal possession of man, the protocol was to euthanize Bambatha. Bambatha was given the death sentence for breaking the law. In the end, he left Earth similar to his father, by human hands, but ultimately truly died doing what he dedicated his life to, fighting the power. When asking me about the connection to spirituality and veganism, you inadvertently asked me the connection between spirituality and morality. Veganism isn't a belief system, and it's more than a diet. It's almost a protest. As I began to eat nutrients given from the earth rather than consuming death, I noticed my consciousness change. But originally I tried being vegan out of curiosity, and the way my body felt kept me there. Back then, I was in a subtractive mindset and simply avoided animal products. But as I began to pursue food with life filled within them, my own life force began to raise into the higher faculties with my body. You see, stopping eating meat halted the descent of that life force into the basic materialistic existence, the lower faculties of our body and consciousness. The densities of non-nutrient foods, as well as death filled within meat and the suffering in dairy, lowers our consciousness to survival mode. It keeps our bodies in a state of dis-ease and traps our minds in the reptilian part of our brain. This doesn't mean that this part of our being is evil. What it means is that by abusing free will, we ultimately lose it. We become addicted to the lower densities and identify with the things we do and consume. We become slaves to the food we eat, our sexual nature, and our will to survive. True food, on the other hand, life-providing food, has no addictive qualities. They raise our consciousness out of ignorance and into the higher faculties of our being. We raise into the mammalia brain and activate our emotional intelligence as well as intellect. We activate true care as we align our actions with morality. A heart-brain coherence is established, and our individual identification begins to connect with the universe. This is when true spirituality begins, when the ego dies and the spirit lives. When we care for more than our own well-being, we activate true well-being.